Hello everyone, welcome back to the Nürburgring. As you can probably tell, a beautifully sunny race ahead of us.
Of course, I am joking. This would actually be one of the most treacherous races I had ever competed in around this track. The weather radar was showing a rather ominous looking cloud, and to make matters even worse, the race would be ending in darkness. Porsche factory driver Laurens Vanthoor agreed with my assessment, claiming that these are the hardest and most difficult conditions in motorsport. We are qualified on pole position for our first race, and Manny seemed very excited for the race start.
Lovely conditions.
It's a bit wet, I would say.
I don't know, slicks, mate.
But I love it. This will be fun.
Yeah, it'll be
I'm
great.
really looking forward.
Yeah.
The conditions are absolutely shocking out there, and I'm going to be out last, and it's going to be dark and wet. So there's lots of things that can possibly go wrong, and they hopefully won't. That's a black flag immediately for our team. Okay, on that note, let's move into the race start. Mr. Manuel Metzger here, kicking off the race. 4 hours of racing ahead of us in atrocious conditions. Now into the first corner, the number 187 there on the left-hand side. Our old rival, going around the outside and moving up immediately into the race lead. Now we've got plenty of time to try to claw this back, but take a look at the conditions here. Absolutely awful. You can barely see anything as soon as you're behind one or two or a few cars. Visibility becomes very difficult to come by, and so safety is the first port of call. But that wasn't always the case, as we can see here with some of the GT3 cars coming into the last couple of corners, going wide into the wall, unfortunately, having to get their cars fixed. This was going to be one of those races where staying on the track and surviving was going to be crucial, but not the easiest thing to do. Manuel Metzger here catching back up with the race leader there, the 187, just shadowing him for a couple of laps before finding the opportunity to go through later on lap 4. So just looking to the inside, making this guy go narrow into the chicane here at the end of the Grand Prix loop, which compromises the exit. Really tidy move here by Manny, getting back the race lead. Fantastic stuff. So now he's the one trying to set the pace, trying to pull away. Amazing stuff as ever. We are, right? I think. Yeah. Manny's doing a great job. It looks sketchy. I can't wait for my stint, but it looks awful out there.
Animal fact. Did you know that the artery of a big sperm whale is so big that a human can crawl through it?
We need to fact check these. He could be lying every time.
Yeah, we really need some verification on these facts. But Misha, done with giving me some facts, it was his time to go out onto the track after Manny brings the car in from the race lead.
But the last 2 laps with so much water and the code 60s, the tire cooled down.
Oh yeah.
Don't feel the rear, and then it starts chattering.
Just goes.
And also sometimes aquaplaning. It is terrifying.
So Manny seems pretty terrified with those last couple of laps. The problem is it's just too cold out there. You can't get temperature in the tyres. Conditions are so bad, and it's only going to be worse when I go out there in a couple of hours' time. It's probably not going to get better.
Now in terms of race progress, the number 187 here coming in for one of their pit stops. And actually, while they're doing that, we retake the lead of the race. So things were going to plan at this moment in time. Jimmy was getting ready for his stint. And when he went out on the track, as you can probably tell, yes, it's getting even worse. Not only in terms of the rain and the wetness, but also in terms of the darkness. The sun by this point had long gone, and the comforts of light was fast disappearing.
Okay guys, so Manny's come in, Misha's come in. They both complained about visibility being very bad and grip being very bad. So I've got to kind of go out there, just bring it home now. I think we're in P2, but I don't think the gap is really closable to P1. So let's just go out there, really manage this. We've got a race tomorrow as well, so don't want to do anything too silly.
And with 1 hour and 1 minute left to go, Jimmy heads in. It's my time to step into the car and go out onto the track for this final stint. Now, my knowledge of the track in the dark is severely limited. Obviously, we know what happened in last year's N24. I didn't get a chance to drive in the darkness, and so with the wet weather as well, this was about to be a very difficult stint. On the exit of turn 1, already having a bit of a moment with the cold tyres. Just really trying to ease my way into this stint and make sure that we don't do anything silly. As we say, the gap to the lead was quite big, and so I wasn't really concerned about that. This was very much a practice session for the N24, the big race. And this was the N24 Qualifier. So we're just trying to do our best here to really get some good practice in and really get some good feeling for the car ahead of the 24-hour race, the biggest race of my career coming up later on. So the GT3 car's coming through as ever. It's really trying to manage the pace over the curb. As you can probably tell, the rain isn't coming down as hard at this point, but what is getting more difficult is the visibility. I noticed that whenever I was behind someone, the windscreen was fogging up quite badly, and so it was very difficult to really judge exactly what was going on. And so here, playing it very safe up against the Toyota Supra GT4 there, just really making sure we don't do anything silly, because it only takes one moment to lose complete control of the car. I was actually gaining on the race lead. I was maybe some laps 10 seconds a lap faster by this point. I didn't really know that at the time, but I was quite happy with the pace, going past most cars and then just getting lapped, of course, by the GT3 cars. I had this massive moment here on the bump. Now that might not look like a big moment, but I can assure you that my heart rate went up to about 5 million when that car turned a little bit sideways there. Coming through the carousel up against some slower class cars here, trying to pick a way through, and again just being super careful about doing that as we try and work out the best line. Now often you have to try and stay off the dry line and go on to the sort of the outside or the inside of that, but that's not always the case. Sometimes you can just take the dry line, and of course with the Nürburgring having so many corners, this is a real test of driving, I think it's fair to say. Now the leaders here coming in for their last pit stop, so we were about to gain about a minute and a half on them. There they go, but it wasn't going to be enough. As we said earlier, because this team has 3 drivers and we have 4, because of the wet conditions we actually had to do 1 extra pit stop, which wasn't helping us. But as we say, this is the N24 Qualifier. This was really just about getting some good practice time behind the wheel, and so we weren't too concerned necessarily with the result. Down in towards turn 1, gap about 2 minutes and 16 seconds. Now heading out past yet more slower cars here. You can see the darkness is beginning to creep in. We still have 4 laps to go, including this one. Certain sections into the forest were definitely a lot darker than the Grand Prix section, with Grello there going through. And the GT3s do have quite a lot of grip actually. And you get cars like this, I mean, they don't always see you coming. As, you know, I could have maybe sent something here, but you do just have to be really patient. Just make sure you don't do anything silly. This is heading down towards Veersai from the slowest corner on the track. And eventually I just sent it. I was stuck behind that car for maybe 4 or 5 corners and just really trying to make sure that we don't have a collision, which would have been so easy to do. Another 15 or so seconds gained against the lead. So definitely moving in the right direction. As we come through Flugplatz, see a bit of a moment there, a bit of a correction, a bit far to the left, a bit further to the left there, mid-corner than you would have liked. And then heading up towards the Nicky Lauda curve here. Difficult corner. I must say the car does have like a lot of grip. It's actually quite amazing how fast you can drive a race car around a racetrack in the dark when it's wet. It's actually quite crazy that this is even allowed, to be honest. So through Bergwerk here at the bottom of the hill, still correcting the wheel, coming off the corner quite narrow to get better traction off of the traditional dry racing line, as we spoke about earlier. As this Subaru 4-wheel drive car goes through, I saw it in the rearview mirror for about 2 laps. It was kind of stalking me for a long time. And normally we'd be quicker than that kind of car in the dry. But in the wet, it really came alive, I think, with a 4-wheel drive. So I just thought, you know what, it's coming up towards me, I'm going to let it go. Going past some of the slower cars here once again, being nice and careful. And then on the back straight, Always these interesting moments when you're getting lapped by a GT3 but also lapping someone else at the same time. Just got to be, again, play it safe, because this was the first race of 2 of this Nürburgring 24 Qualifier, as we had a race the following day. We didn't want to ruin the car. Now, just turning on the high beam there, and you can probably tell that it didn't really make too much difference. And so I really did struggle, I must say, at this point. Really trying to grasp any sense of visibility in front of me. It was quite tricky, especially, as I say, through the forested sections of the track. Now, onto the final lap of 21. Still in second. The gap came down to below 2 minutes. And I'd gained about 45 seconds, I think, or nearly a minute on the lead. So I was happy with the pace. It's just a shame that we had to do an extra pit stop. I think without that extra pit stop, it would have been, once again, incredibly close between us and the 187. So it just shows that we are in a good place, I think, here with the car. That car there, not sure what they were doing. Deciding to go around the outside. Now, eventually, the 187 crossed the line to win yet another round. And about 93 seconds later, so about a minute and a half later, I've come through, very relieved to bring the car home in one piece in a solid second place.
Pichu. That's enough.
Yeah, that one P2.
I don't like it anymore.
That's the last one.
So we
Yeah, the
are,
last one.
what, 4 seconds minus the pit stop?
Mega stint. So much fun out there. It's treacherous. I had a big moment coming up the hill, nearly lost it, but the last lap was pretty much completely dark. You can't see the conditions. So good practice for the 24. I was scanning those Marshall posts as well. But anyway, we've got a race tomorrow. Let's go and do it.
For the second race of the weekend, the weather was once again giving us a fresh set of problems. I went out for a recon lap. The track appeared to be drying out. However, we would be getting rain just as the race was starting. And this made selecting the correct tyres quite difficult.
We think there's going to be a shower at 1 or rain at 1, which is when exactly the race starts. So this could go completely one way or the other, but I think wets is the right or the safe choice. So let's just see what happens.
We would find out in about 20 minutes' time if it was the right decision. Pretty much all of our rivals here on the wet tyre as well. However, the track, as you can probably tell, was actually quite dry. So all of us were banking on the weather radar being correct. Would it be? Well, on a recon lap, which takes about 20 minutes to go all the way around, the rolling up lap, should we say, some sections were wet, but to be honest, I think it was dry enough to go onto slicks. But as we near the end of the lap, this rain shower that was promised wasn't really delivering. And so we'll be driving into this race on a dry track with wet tyres. From P2 on the grid, we immediately here move into the race lead. However, this was not about to last long as we break in towards turn 1. The 155 there on my outside, go quite deep into the corner, run him wide, run him deep. And on the exit, I just can't quite get the traction down. And this is where I knew that this was about to be a very difficult stint. For whatever reason, I just could not generate the temperature into the tyres, and the others began to quite quickly pull away. As you can see, the 155 here just seemingly able to turn in, have much more confidence with his tyres, and pull away. And so I was driving as hard as I could, but it didn't seem to be enough. And so all I could do is really just hang in there and hope that something would happen in terms of the weather or the strategy. So later on the Grand Prix loop, again, you see they're really having to fight the car as the Aston Martin goes through. Another car goes up the inside here into Bilstein corner of all corners. It doesn't quite manage to get the job done. Onto the Nordschleife. The Cup 3 car goes through, and the Cup 2 car goes through. So this was, again, it's going to be a really difficult stint trying to manage with the 187 now just behind as we hurtle down the hill, doing my best here to try to keep in position. It seems as though we've already had an off with the yellow flag, And the barrier here at Flugplatz, quite badly damaged with some car parts strewn across the circuit. We navigate that safely in towards Metzgersfeld. This is where the 187 is going to look for the move. Doesn't quite make it work. As we head downhill, the two BMWs in the rearview mirror fighting side by side. 187 actually loses a position there as we're just trying to fight a rear guard retreat here and hope that at the end of the lap we can get onto the slick tyres. Now, I was told for strategy reasons we needed to do at least 3 laps on these tyres, otherwise we'd have to do an extra pit stop, which would cost us, let's say, another minute and a half or something like that. And so this was not the most welcome news, given that I was having a really hard time here generating or firing up any temperature into these tyres. Decided, you know what, let's not fight this too much. 187 goes through, and all these cars just seemed to be able to get more temperature into the tyres, and they just seemed a lot more comfortable. And normally I'm quite fine with these conditions, but this was going to be a difficult stint. End of lap number 1, obviously staying out, trying to get the wet tyres into any form of wet patch that I might see. There weren't really many by this point. The track had dried out quite a lot as we crossed the line there to end the first lap. We've got to go around once again, so near enough like 10 minutes of driving here on these pretty worn tyres by this point. Wet tyres on a dry track is, well, it's a recipe for burning them out very quickly. I was driving okay. I mean, I was doing all I could do, really. Sometimes there's just not a lot you can do. But at the end of lap 2, we brought the car in and just hoped the strategy would come in our favour later on. Thankfully, getting off of those wets and getting onto a fresh set of slicks. Now, obviously, in hindsight, it would have been the better decision just to start on the slicks. Some teams did. And that's why we have dropped a few positions here. And we sit about 1 minute 40 off of the race lead. Now that's FK Performance 187. They decided to stay out for another lap, so they're on the 3rd lap on the wet tyre. We are going on the slicks here, hoping that maybe the strategy would change later on, and therefore we wouldn't have to do this extra pit stop. But immediately feeling a lot more comfortable here with the slicks. Yes, the track is still a tiny bit wet in places, but for the most part, have the confidence to push fully and try to regain some lost time. So the first 2 laps, a complete disaster. I think I drove all I could, really. But now it's a case of just trying to fight back and gain as many positions and as much time as possible, being aggressive here against traffic to really make sure we don't lose time and take a bit more risk than normal, I would say. This is into Bergwerk here. Lap number 3, up against the Cup 3 car. Getting a nice exit and going through quite comfortably. And I was following this Cup 3 car for quite a while. It was a good little battle until we got behind this couple of cars here, at which point he began to struggle, and I was able to catch up quite quickly. Looking around the outside here, just trying to maybe find an opening. Didn't quite work out for me there. Not that this is for a battle in class, but you still want to get past as many cars as possible to get the clear air. That car there going quite slowly. We've got a Cup 2 car, interestingly, a long way off the pace, perhaps on wet tyres. So this was an interesting phase of the race where people are on all different sorts of tyres at this point, and you're just trying to make your way through. You get stuck behind someone who's on wets for a couple of corners, you can easily lose a lot of time. Gaining another position there as we head towards turn 1, and having the confidence to brake pretty much on the 150 or just after to meet the apex eventually. So later on, lap number 4, so 2nd lap on the slick tyres here. With the mixed strategy, we were kind of in and amongst a lot of the slower class cars given our pit stop, and so there's quite a bit of management here to do of the traffic, which is always quite fun, to be honest. I always quite like trying to decide exactly how to overtake everyone in the slower classes. Gaining yet another position at the beginning of lap number 5 with cars still going into the pit lane. And this is what it's like sometimes being a driver in one of these races. I mean, we have the benefit now of having all of the HUD and the position counter and everything. But obviously in the race car you don't really have that. You're just kind of out there driving and hoping that it's enough, not knowing exactly what the gaps are, not knowing what position you're in sometimes, not knowing what lap you're on. And so you just got to head out there and drive. Catching up here with the car that overtook me most of the way around lap number 1. So it's quite encouraging to see cars coming towards me which resemble GT4 cars. It's always nice. Now this was quite an aggressive move, I think, as we get in the slipstream. In before Flugplatz, just taking the inside, taking the initiative and going for it. And actually we were gaining quite nicely on the race lead, 19 seconds behind by this point. So not too bad. I mean, I lost maybe 30 to 45 seconds, I think, on those opening 2 laps, given how bad they were. I was going in the right direction, gaining on the race lead, 17 seconds off by this point, with the 187 about 18 seconds behind me. However, that gap was about to come down. So is this going to be a move here? Not quite. Another couple of Cup 3 cars here to try to navigate. Normally they're maybe 10-15 seconds a lap slower, so they can hang with you. But then you can see here, overpowering them on the exit of the corner and going through quite nicely. Do you go for the move here into Bergwerk? It would be a risky one from this far back. And so we're just going to play it safe. I mean, that would have been an impossible move, or a very foolish move from that far back. So we just get the exit. You might as well just wait for that. And then we can power past quite easily here. So a little bit later on, taking the race lead after the 155 goes in for their second stop. However, the FK Performance car was gaining quite quickly. By this point, 5 seconds behind. And I could see them in the rear view mirror. I mean, you can see them now. Take a look in that mirror. They are there. And this is where they get through. I held them off on the Grand Prix loop until this moment here. And I don't think there's really much more I could have done to prevent this overtake, because we're heading up the hill. This is for the race lead, and this is going to be my in lap. So I'm going to be into the pit lane at the end of this lap. It would be nice to try and hold him off. So I blocked the left-hand side, but their car is just such a rocket ship in a straight line, and they go through into the race lead. Again, not much I think I could have done about that. So we just have to continue, try to minimise the race time loss to them. As I suppose, given everything that's happened, sitting here in second is not too bad. And so when I brought the car in at the end of that lap, I was quite pleased with my stint.
Oh, that was a tiring stint. That was a bit longer than I expected. 1 hour 40 I was out there for. And hunting down the lead, I was about, I think, 10 seconds off, but got overtaken by 187. I just could not hold them off. Car is so quick in a straight line.
Now, the weather threw in a late scare, giving us a chance possibly to catch up. That didn't quite transpire. We would eventually finish in P2, but this was a good result. Good preparation for the N24, which is the main thing. It's going to be another P2. The main thing is that we are, I think, fully prepared for the 24-hour. Good practice in nighttime, rain, changing conditions, pretty much everything. I think the car is great. Yes, second place twice, but the car is in a good place. So we're going to head to the 24, the next big race. It's the biggest race I'll ever compete in. Let's not repeat last year. Let's go in and have a good one. I'll see you there.